The scream didn't come from a horror movie. It came from a millionaire's backyard, and it was about to blow his perfect life apart. In the shadow of bright pink bougainvillea, Maya, the house cleaner in a crisp blue uniform, locked both hands on the wheelchair handles and didn't move an inch. In front of her sat Ethan, a frail 14-year-old with legs too thin to hold him, eyes wide, with the kind of fear that makes kids forget how to breathe. Behind them, Veronica, the polished stepmother, with a designer dress and nails like knives, lunged forward and hissed, "Let him go, you thief!" Her manicured fingers clamped onto Maya's arm, digging in hard enough to leave marks. Maya swallowed the pain and stayed planted. "Ma'am, you're hurting him," she said, voice shaking but steady. Ethan shrank deeper into his chair. He wanted to speak, wanted to defend the only person in that mansion who ever smiled at him, but fear had sewn his mouth shut. Then the gravel crunched. Grant Ethan's father stepped into the garden tired suit, loosened tie, and the authority of a man used to controlling rooms. Veronica's face transformed in a blink, tears trembling innocence. She pointed at Maya like a weapon. "I caught her on top of him," she sobbed. "She's stealing?" Grant's gaze hardened, until Maya raised her chin and said one sentence that froze the air. "Call the police. But first look at what your wife is hiding in her right hand." Grant didn't shout. He didn't have to. His voice dropped like a judge's gavel. "What the hell is going on?" And Veronica, oh, she didn't miss a beat. She rushed into his arms, shaking like a wounded dove, pressing her tear-streaked face into his white shirt as if the fabric could save her. "Thank God you're here," she cried. "I was terrified." Grant's eyes stayed locked on Maya, taking in the yellow gloves, the heaving chest, the stance that at the wrong angle looked like a threat. Terrified of what he asked, Veronica pulled back just enough to point, of her. Then she lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret too ugly to say out loud. "I heard noises. I went outside and found her. On top of Ethan." Maya's stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling downstairs. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Ethan stared at the ground, frozen his silence, reading like shame. Veronica turned the knife. She was forcing him to tell her where the safe is. When I tried to stop her, she attacked me. She lifted her arm, showing a red mark that looked like proof, except Maya knew exactly how it got there. Grant stepped toward Maya. "Carmen," he started, then caught himself, as if even her name didn't deserve to be spoken with respect. "Explain." "I swear on my life," Maya pleaded, hands raised, palms out. "I was fixing his blanket. He was cold." Veronica laughed, sharp and cruel. "Cold. In this weather?" And then, fast as a street magician, she reached into Maya's apron pocket and yanked out a gleam of gold. "Look!" she shrieked. "His mother's watch. She was stealing it." Grant stared at the watch like it was a dead thing. Something in him snapped. "Take off your gloves," he ordered, disgust iced into every syllable. "Get out, now!" Maya's fingers went numb as Grant yanked at the edge of her glove. The latex stretched, snapped, and slid off like skin being peeled in public. Her bare hand, small cracked from bleach, and hot water hung in the air under the golden light, exposed and shaking. Grant tossed the glove onto the stone path as if it were contaminated. 2 minutes, he said, voice flat with disgust. "If you're still here when I walk inside, I'll call the police. Theft, assault, you'll rot." Behind him, Veronica tightened her arms around Ethan's shoulders like a trophy, smiling into his hair where only Maya could see it. Ethan's eyes squeezed shut. Silent tears traced down his pale cheeks. He didn't look at the watch. He didn't look at his father. He looked at Maya like he was begging her to understand why he couldn't speak. For a heartbeat, Maya almost turned to run. Jail. No paycheck. No way to send money home. Fear swarmed her chest. Then she saw Ethan flinch when Veronica's hand slid just a little too hard against his neck. Something inside Maya lit up hot, clean, unstoppable. She wiped her face with the back of her bare hand, straightened her spine, and looked Grant in the eye. Not like an employee, but like a woman standing in the middle of a fire. "Call them," she said, steady as stone. "Call the police, Mr. Grant. But I'm not taking one step until you look at what your wife is hiding in her right hand behind her back." The garden went dead silent. Even the birds seemed to disappear. Veronica's smile faltered. Grant froze, and Ethan, still shaking, lifted his gaze for the first time, pleading with his father without saying a single word. Grant didn't move at first. He just stood there breathing hard, like Maya's words had punched a hole through his certainty. The loose knot of his tie pressed against his throat like a phantom rope. His eyes flicked to Maya, bare-handed, trembling, but staring back with a fire that didn't match the face of a thief. Then slowly he turned toward Veronica, and that's when he saw it. Her posture had changed. Not the soft, trembling victim pose. Something tighter. Coiled. Her right arm was pinned behind her lower back, fist clenched under the folds of her dress like she was hiding a stone or a blade. Veronica let out a laugh that came out too sharp, too brittle. "Grant, don't be ridiculous." She stepped closer, trying to close the distance, trying to flood him with perfume and warmth and practiced touch. Her left hand rose toward his cheek. "My love, look at Ethan. He's terrified. This woman is buying time." But Grant didn't lean in. He looked at Ethan instead, and the boy wasn't looking at Maya with fear. Ethan's wide, dark eyes were fixed on his father, begging for something he couldn't say out loud, a silent SOS. Grant's jaw tightened. The businessman in him, the man who could smell a lie across a boardroom table, finally woke up at home. "Show me your hand," he said. Veronica blinked. "What?" "Your right hand," Grant repeated, voice rough, unfamiliar. "The one behind your back. Now." Veronica's smile cracked, just for a second, long enough for Maya to see panic flash under the makeup. "How dare you," she snapped, offended, on cue. "You're going to search your own wife because of a cleaner." Maya didn't flinch. "If she drops it, you'll never know the truth," she said quietly. "And Ethan will." Grant's voice dropped lower, dangerously calm. "Open it." Veronica's eyes flashed. She tried one last pivot pure theater. "If you don't trust me, fine," she spat. "I'm leaving. I'll pack. This marriage is a joke." She spun toward the terrace heels, clicking fast, her right fist still glued behind her hip like a secret. Maya's blood went cold. "Don't let her inside," she shouted. "If she gets to a bathroom, it's gone." That did it. Grant moved, 3 long strides across the stone path. He caught Veronica by the left arm, just before the flowered archway. She twisted like a trapped snake, hissing, yanking, trying to tear free. "You're hurting me," she screamed. "Show me your hand." Grant roared, and the garden seemed to shrink around them. Veronica clenched harder, knuckles white, nails digging into her own skin. Grant grabbed her right wrist and pinned it. For a second it was ugly money, and power, and marriage collapsing into a fistfight over truth. Veronica fought like her life depended on it. Because it did. Grant pressed down on a pressure point in her wrist. Her fingers trembled. Then, in a sudden spasm, her fist popped open. 2 small objects dropped onto the stone. A thin syringe-empty needle, still wet with a clear bead, and a small amber vial with cloudy liquid sloshing inside. No label. No prescription. Just silence. Grant recoiled, like the ground had turned to fire. "What is that?" he whispered. Maya sank to her knees, pointing with her bare hand. "That's why Ethan's always sleeping," she said, voice cracking. "I found one like it in the trash last week, and I heard her on the phone saying the dose would keep him quiet until you got back." Ethan's wheelchair creaked just once, but in that quiet garden it sounded like thunder. "Maya's lying," Veronica said quickly, voice turning syrupy casual like she was explaining a dinner menu. "It's natural. Homeopathic. He gets anxious when you're gone. I'm helping him sleep." Grant stared at the syringe on the stone. The needle glinted like a warning. "You inject my son with homeopathy." He said each word cold, Colder than the last. Veronica shrugged. Pills, he spits them out. This is faster. You're never here, Grant. You don't deal with his whining. I keep this house peaceful for you. A small broken sound came from behind her. Not Maya. Not Grant. From the chair. Liar. Grant and Veronica snapped their heads around. Ethan had pushed himself forward, hands gripping the wheels like he was anchoring himself to reality. His face was wet with tears, but his eyes and those eyes were finally alive. She's lying, he repeated louder this time, voice cracking like glass. It's not medicine. Veronica's expression tightened. Ethan, sweetheart, no. Ethan's breath hitched, and he yanked up the sleeve of his t-shirt with shaking fingers. Dad, look. Grant stumbled toward him, knees bending as if his body knew before his mind could handle it. On Ethan's pale upper arm were bruises, old ones fading green and yellow, small pinch marks on the soft inner skin, and fresh red dots. 1, 2, 3, 5. Puncture sites. Grant's fingertips hovered, then touched gently. Ethan flinched, but didn't pull away like he'd been waiting his whole life for his father to finally be careful. She told me if I told you, Ethan whispered, swallowing hard, you'd leave me. She said you wanted a pretty wife, not a broken son. Grant's face didn't just change. It hardened like wet cement turning to stone. A single tear slipped down his cheek, hot with shame, then vanished as his jaw clenched shut. When he stood, it wasn't the tired CEO anymore. It was a father who realized he'd left a wolf in the nursery. Veronica took one step back, then another. For the first time, her perfect mask didn't work. Fear showed through the cracks. Grant, wait, listen. He's confused, she stammered. He imagines things. You know how sensitive he is. Don't, Grant said, low and lethal. Don't say my son's name like you own it. He bent down, picked up the gold watch, Ethan's mother's watch, from the stone where it had fallen earlier, and wiped it against his shirt like he was erasing Veronica from it. Then he turned to Maya. Maya was still on her knees, bare hand trembling, dirt and tears on her face. She braced for the final blow, handcuffs, screaming humiliation. Instead, Grant extended his hand, not to command her, to lift her. Maya, he said, soft, raw, like the word itself cost him something. Please, stand up. She took his hand. Her rough palm met his smooth one. He pulled her to her feet, with surprising gentleness, eyes locked on hers. I'm sorry, he whispered. I was blind. I humiliated you when you were the only one protecting my child. Then Grant turned back to Veronica, and his voice turned to ice. This is over, he said. You're leaving my home, now. Veronica's lips parted, stunned. You can't. I'm your wife, Grant replied. Now you're a danger. Veronica's heels scraped backward on the stone like she was searching for an exit that didn't exist. Grant thinks she snapped, scrambling for her old weapons status, scandal reputation. The investors, the board, do you want headlines? Your wife arrested, your company in ruins. Grant didn't blink. He stepped in front of Ethan's wheelchair, not as a businessman guarding assets, but as a father guarding flesh and bone. I don't care about headlines, he said. I care about what you did to my son. Veronica's face twisted. You're overreacting. It was to calm him down. He's difficult when you leave. Stop talking! Grant cut in, voice rising like thunder over the garden. You don't get to rewrite this. He turned his head slightly toward Maya, never taking his eyes off Veronica. Call the police, he said. And call my attorney. Tell them we're pressing charges, child abuse and possession of illegal substances. Maya's breath caught. A second ago, she'd been the accused. Now she was standing beside him like the only witness who mattered. Yes, sir, she whispered. Then corrected herself without meaning to because everything had changed. Yes. Right away. Ethan made a small sound, half sob, half relief. Grant crouched beside him. Careful this time, moving slowly like he was afraid his hands might break something sacred. She's not coming back, he promised. And his voice finally cracked. I swear to you. Veronica's confidence collapsed into rage. You'll regret this, she screamed, eyes wild. That cripple will ruin your life. Grant stood taller than she'd ever seen him. Get out, he said. 2 words. Final. And for the first time in that mansion, the monster wasn't in control anymore. The sirens came fast, too fast for Veronica to rebuild her mask. Red and blue lights splashed across the mansion windows like warning paint. She bolted inside anyway, not to pack, but to loot, yanking open drawers, ripping velvet cases, stuffing diamonds and cash into a purse with shaking hands. Then a voice stopped her cold. "Is that all you ever loved?" Grant stood in the doorway, arms crossed, calm in the scariest way. Not yelling, not pleading, just watching her like a stranger. Veronica spun, clutching the bag to her chest. "It's my money," she hissed, pearls dangling from her lips like a bad joke. "I earned it years trapped in this boring house babysitting your—" "Don't." Grant's eyes went dark. "Don't finish that sentence." Boots thundered up the stairs. Veronica's face drained under the makeup. "Grant, please," she gasped, suddenly soft again. "Think about the scandal. Your reputation. Your stock." "My reputation can burn," Grant said. "My son already did." The officers burst in. Hands up. Veronica froze, then lunged toward the bathroom like she could lock the truth away. Grant stepped into her path, without touching her, just a wall of judgment. The purse slipped from her fingers. Jewelry hit the floor in a loud, pathetic spill. "She set me up," Veronica screamed as cuffs snapped shut. Grant didn't flinch. "Take her," he told the officers, "and document everything. My attorney will bring the evidence within the hour." Downstairs through the glass, he saw Maya kneeling beside Ethan's wheelchair, fixing his shirt button with gentle, practiced hands. Ethan leaned into her shoulder like it was the first safe place he'd ever known. Grant pressed his forehead to the cold window. He had all the money in the world, and he'd never felt poorer. Grant didn't sleep that night. The mansion was quiet again, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that screams if you listen hard enough. When he walked back into the garden at dusk, the path lights had clicked on, stretching long shadows over the grass. Maya and Ethan were still there, unmoving like they'd been glued to the only safe corner of the world. Ethan stiffened the moment he heard his father's footsteps. His hand shot out and grabbed Maya's, squeezing like a lifeline. That simple reflex, hide behind her, "Not me," stabbed Grant straight through the chest. "She's gone," Grant said, stopping a few feet away. He kept his hands visible, empty, helpless. "The police took her. She's not coming back, I swear." Ethan didn't answer. He stared at his own fingers, twisting an invisible ring, trying to disappear. Maya lifted her swollen eyes. Calm. Firm. "He's exhausted," she told Grant quietly. "He's shaking. He needs warm food, a bath, and soft light. Too much stress makes his stomach turn." Grant nodded too fast, desperate to be useful. Yes, I'll take him." He reached for the wheelchair handles. Ethan flinched so hard he curled in on himself, arms flying up to shield his head. A broken whisper slipped out. "No, please." Grant froze like he'd touched fire. "Ethan, it's me. It's Dad." Ethan's voice cracked. "You go too fast. You hit the door frames. It hurts." Grant's hands hovered in mid-air, useless. He remembered the few times he'd pushed that chair phone to his ear, rushing, treating his son like luggage. Maya stepped in without asking. "Let me," she said gently, taking the handles like a promise. Then she leaned close to Ethan's ear. "Hot cocoa. Okay. Soft music. Your dad will open the doors. Slow. Safe." And for the first time, Grant realized this wasn't about money anymore. This was about learning how to stay. At 3 a.m., the mansion didn't feel like a home. It felt like a haunted museum. And then the scream hit. Not a nightmare whimper, a full-body war cry. Grant jolted awake in the stiff chair beside Ethan's bed, heart slamming. The bedside lamp threw sickly yellow light across the sheets, and what he saw froze his blood. Ethan was twisting, drenched in cold sweat, eyes wide but empty, locked onto things that weren't there. His thin arms clawed at his skin like it was on fire. "Get them off me!" Ethan howled. "They're crawling, burning." Grant lunged forward, trying to hold his son's hands still, but Ethan fought with a wild, unnatural strength, panic mixed with withdrawal. Grant's voice cracked. "Ethan." "It's Dad. Wake up, please." Ethan kicked hard, catching Grant in the chest. Air vanished from Grant's lungs. He staggered back, terrified, reaching for his phone with shaking fingers. An ambulance. A private hospital. Any check big enough to stop this. The door flew open. Maya rushed in, not in her uniform now, but in a worn cotton robe, hair loose face, sharp with determination. She saw the phone in Grant's hand and snapped. "Don't call anyone. He's convulsing." Grant gasped. "He needs a doctor. He needs the poison out," Maya said, climbing onto the bed like the rules didn't exist. She slid behind Ethan and wrapped him in a firm, protective hold, rocking him through the storm. "Shh. Let it out, baby. I've got you. I'm here." Grant stood there useless, crying. "What do I do?" he whispered. Maya didn't look away from Ethan. "Cold cloths. A bucket he'll vomit. And then sit here and hold his hand. Don't let go. Even if he screams." Grant moved like a man underwater. He sprinted to the bathroom, yanked the faucet to ice-cold, soaked towels until his hands went numb, then grabbed the nearest bucket like it was a life raft. No staff, no assistants, no witnesses. This was his punishment and his chance. When he stumbled back, Ethan was gagging dry, heaving in violent waves. Maya held his forehead with one hand, wiping his mouth with the edge of her own sleeve, like nothing in the world mattered more than keeping him clean, keeping him here. Grant dropped to his knees beside the bed and pressed the cold cloths to Ethan's burning skin. For a split second, Ethan's eyes focused. Not on the ceiling, not on the shadows. On Grant. "Dad." Ethan rasped, voice tiny and shredded. "It hurts. Everywhere. It feels like bugs in my bones." Grant's throat closed. He took Ethan's hand, cold, sweaty, trembling, and wrapped both of his around it, like he could anchor his son to the earth. "I know, champ," he whispered, kissing his knuckles, tears falling freely. "I know. It's the bad stuff leaving. You're not alone. I'm right here." "I'm scared," Ethan breathed. "Me too," Grant admitted, shaking. "But I'm not going anywhere. Look at me. I'm staying." Hours crawled by. Ethan vomited until there was nothing left but bile and sobs. He shook. He begged. He screamed at ghosts. And every time his fingers tried to slip away, Grant held tighter, learning for the first time what real love costs. Near dawn, the fever broke. Ethan's body softened into a deep, natural sleep, the first one in months. The room smelled like sickness and victory. Maya stepped down quietly, eyes heavy but steady. She looked at Grant on the floor and murmured, almost tender, "You did good tonight, because you stayed." Morning came in thin gray light, the kind that makes a mansion look less like a palace and more like a shell. Grant sat alone at the kitchen island, still in yesterday's clothes, coffee untouched in his hands. Upstairs, Ethan finally slept. Real sleep, not drugged silence with Maya, keeping watch like a lighthouse that refused to dim. Then Grant's phone buzzed. Once, twice, again. The screen flashed a name from his old life, Derek, his business partner. Grant answered on speaker voice flat. "Yeah, where are you?" Derek barked over office noise. "The Japanese investors have been waiting 10 minutes. If you're not here in 30, the whole merger collapses. $50 million, Grant. Move." Grant stared out the window at the garden where everything had shattered. He could still see the stone path, the glove he'd thrown, the syringe. The moment he almost lost his son. "I'm not coming," Grant said. Silence on the line, then disbelief. "Are you drunk? You'll get sued. You'll lose your board seat, your bonuses." Maya walked in quietly with a breakfast tray for Ethan. She stopped when she heard the shouting eyes dropping like she already knew how this story usually ends. Money wins. The boss leaves. The kid stays behind. Grant watched that assumption settle on her shoulders, and something inside him snapped clean and final. Derek kept yelling, "Hire a nurse. That's what being rich is for." Grant's grip tightened. "No," he said, calm as steel. "You can't hire a father. He took a breath. I quit. Handle the deal yourself. What did you just say? Grant turned the phone off and slid it away like a closed casket. Then he looked at Maya, tired, stunned, hopeful. It's paper, he whispered. Ethan is my life, and I'm done being absent. 3 weeks later, the withdrawal storm had passed, but it left a new battlefield behind. Grant had turned the old ballroom into a rehab room. The mirrors still ran floor to ceiling, but the crystal chandelier now watched over wooden parallel bars instead of fancy parties. Ethan's legs looked like fragile branches under his gym shorts. Months of sedation and forced stillness had stolen what little strength he had. Grant knelt in front of him anyway, hands braced at Ethan's ankles, guiding the motion like he was trying to negotiate with gravity. I can't. Ethan sobbed, arms trembling as he held himself up. It hurts. It doesn't respond. You can. Grant pushed, voice hoarse. Just one step. Tell your right foot to move. Ethan's fingers slipped. His body dropped. Knees hit the floor with a hard, dry smack. Then came a sound worse than the fall, Ethan's humiliation, raw and shaking, filling the room. Grant froze. His chest rose like he'd been punched. From the corner, Maya didn't run. She walked in slow, heavy steps like a mother walking into a fire. Out, she said. Grant blinked. Maya, and see, I said out. Her voice cracked like a whip. You're trying to fix your guilt, not his legs. You want him to walk fast so you can stop hating yourself. This isn't about you. Grant's face drained. He looked down at Ethan, curled on the floor, covering his head like the old days. Without a word, Grant backed out and shut the door. Inside, Maya sat beside Ethan and waited until his breathing slowed. Then she warmed oil between her palms and began to massage his calves, firm, steady circles. You know why it hurts, she whispered. Because it's waking up. Dead things don't hurt. Living things do. Ethan sniffed. You really think I'll stand again? Maya held his gaze. Not today. But yes. And we'll do it your way. A moment later, Ethan rose, shaking, standing for 5 full seconds. In the hallway, Grant slid down the wall, hearing Maya whisper, You did it, and finally understanding this was a marathon, and he had to learn how to walk it. That night, a tropical storm rolled in like it had a grudge. Rain hammered the glass walls, turning the mansion into a drum of guilt. Grant couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ethan's bruised arm, the pinpricks, the syringe on the stone. He wandered downstairs barefoot, chasing quiet. But the kitchen light was already on. Maya sat at the marble table, with a steaming cup of tea, staring out at the black garden, where the bougainvillea swayed like ghosts. Her hair was down. No uniform, just a worn robe and a tired face that still refused to break. You can't sleep either, Grant asked softly. Maya nodded. Rain like this? It sounds like my hometown. Grant sat across from her, hands clasped so tight his knuckles paled. I'm sorry, he said. Today, in rehab, I scared him. I scared him like she did. Maya didn't flinch. Fear makes people stupid, she said gently. You see Ethan, and you see your failure. So you push, you rush, but healing doesn't sprint. Grant's eyes glistened. How do you have so much patience? He isn't even your son. Maya's gaze dropped to her tea. When she spoke, her voice was quiet and wrecked. Because I have my own guilt. She swallowed hard. My son's name is Lucas. He's 8. I left him with his grandmother to come work here to send money for shoes for school. And every time I hold Ethan when he's shaking, I feel like I'm stealing that hug from my own boy. A single tear fell onto the table. Grant reached across, hesitant, then covered her hand with his. Bring Lucas here, he said firm. Bring him and his grandmother. This is my house, so the rules change tonight. Ethan needs a friend, and you deserve your child. The next morning, the mansion held its breath like it knew something big was coming. Grant had the driver bring Lucas and his grandmother from the bus station, and he waited on the front steps like a man about to meet his own consequences. Ethan sat on the porch in his wheelchair, trying to look calm, but his fingers kept rubbing the armrests until they shined. Maya stood behind him in a simple cotton dress, no uniform, like she'd finally stepped out of the shadows. When the black SUV stopped, a small boy jumped out. First, sun-browned knees, scuffed sneakers, eyes sharp with curiosity. Lucas froze for half a second, staring at the mansion like it was a movie set. Then his gaze dropped to Ethan. No pity, no awkwardness, just a grin. "Hi, Lucas," shouted, running up the ramp. "My mom says you've got video games. Is that true, or did she trick me?" Ethan blinked and laughed. A real laugh. The tight air cracked open. Grant watched it happen and felt something he hadn't felt in years, relief that wasn't bought. Because in 30 seconds, a kid with nothing had given Ethan what money never could normal. You can outsource chores, you can outsource meetings, you can outsource almost everything. But you cannot outsource presence. The people you love don't need your perfect plan. They need your hands, your time, your patience. They need you to show up when it's messy. If this story touched something in you, tell me in the comments. Who in your life needs you to stay more starting today? And before you go, hit subscribe. Tap the bell and share where you're watching from, because stories like this remind us what real family is.